Willow Creek was a town where things stayed the same. People lived, worked, and died within its quiet borders. But every now and then, someone came passing through, a young woman looking for a fresh start, a wanderer hoping for adventure. And that's when the Holloway family thrived. Deep in the woods, far beyond the last paved road, stood the Holloway home. An old farmhouse with chipped paint and thick ivy curling around the wooden frame. Smoke always rose from its crooked chimney, no matter the hour. The windows were boarded up, not to keep anything out, but to keep something in. The Holloways had a tradition, a way of living. And it all started with Lucas. He was their golden boy, tall, charming, and handsome enough to make any woman trust him. His voice was smooth, his smile disarming. When he walked into town, the locals tipped their hats, but they never asked too many questions. They knew better. Tonight, Lucas was not alone. Evelyn Carter walked beside him, her auburn hair catching the glow of the street lamps. She had arrived in Willow Creek just weeks ago, looking for a quiet life after leaving behind a broken past. She was exactly the kind of girl Lucas was meant to find, alone, unsuspecting, easy to disappear. "Are you sure it's not too far?" Evelyn asked, glancing back toward town. Lucas smiled, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "It's just up ahead. My family's been dying to meet you." She blushed. It had been years since anyone made her feel wanted. Lucas was different, gentle, attentive, eager to know everything about her. He had told her he wanted to show her something special, something no one else in town knew about. And she wanted to believe him. The woods thickened as they walked, the trees pressing close like silent watchers. The path beneath their feet turned from dirt to uneven stones, and the wind carried a strange, metallic scent. Then, the house came into view. The Holloway farmhouse stood hunched in the darkness, its windows glowing dimly. The air felt wrong here, too still, too expectant. Evelyn hesitated, her fingers tightening around Lucas's hand. "Are they awake?" she asked with a nervous chuckle. Lucas's grip turned to iron. "They never sleep." The front door creaked open before they even reached it. A woman stood in the doorway, her silhouette thin and sharp. Eleanor Holloway, Lucas's mother, with her sunken eyes and tight smile. My, she cooed. "Aren't you a pretty one?" Evelyn shivered as the woman stepped aside. The warmth of the house hit her in waves, spiced, rich, heavy, like a meal that had been cooking all night. Inside, the rest of the family was waiting. Samuel Holloway, the father, sat at the long wooden table, his fingers drumming idly against the surface. At his side was Mary, Lucas's younger sister, her blonde curls framing a face too youthful for the sharp gleam in her eyes. Evelyn forced a polite smile. "It's nice to meet you all." Lucas guided her forward. "She's special," he said, his voice carrying a weight she didn't understand. Eleanor shut the door behind them. "Come," Samuel said, gesturing to the table. "We've prepared a feast." Evelyn hesitated. Something was wrong. The food on the table, thick slabs of meat, dark and glistening, sent a shudder down her spine. The smell was too strong, too rich. Lucas sat beside her, his hand resting lightly on her knee. "Eat," he whispered. She forced herself to pick up a fork, stabbing into the nearest piece of meat. It was tender, falling apart beneath her touch. She brought it to her lips, hesitating only for a second before taking a bite. The taste was unlike anything she had ever had. Deep, almost sweet. The Holloways watched her closely, their eyes gleaming in the dim candlelight. "You like it?" Eleanor asked, her voice dripping with amusement. Evelyn swallowed thickly. "It's different." Lucas leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear. "It's tradition," he whispered. Then, the basement door creaked open. A faint sound drifted up from below, a muffled whimper. Evelyn's stomach twisted as she turned toward the noise. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mary giggled, her fingers tapping against her plate. "Oh, just someone waiting their turn." Evelyn's blood ran cold. She looked at Lucas, searching for reassurance, but his expression was unreadable. Another sound came from below. A voice. Weak, pleading. Evelyn stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. I should go." Lucas caught her wrist. "Not yet." His grip was strong. Too strong. Eleanor rose from her seat, moving toward the basement door. "Would you like to see?" "No," Evelyn said quickly, her breath coming fast. She turned back to Lucas, her panic rising. "Take me home. Now." Lucas didn't move. "You are home," Eleanor said softly. The realization hit her like a punch to the stomach. This wasn't dinner. This was a trap. She bolted. Her feet barely touched the floor as she ran, slamming into the front door, locked. She twisted the knob, yanking, pulling, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, Mary laughed. "She's a feisty one." Hands grabbed her shoulders. Lucas. She thrashed, kicking at his legs, clawing at his arms. Then, a sound rang out. Loud. Sudden. Lucas froze. His grip slackened. Evelyn turned. The basement door stood open now, and from the darkness below, a figure emerged. It was a woman. Her clothes were tattered, her arms covered in bruises, her face thin and sunken, but her eyes burned with a fury Evelyn had never seen before. And in her hand, she held a knife. "Run," the woman gasped. The Holloways moved as one, their faces twisting with rage. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She spun toward the door, throwing her full weight against it. The old wood groan cracked, then burst open. Cold night air filled her lungs as she stumbled forward. Behind her, screams erupted inside the house. The woman had attacked. Evelyn ran. She didn't stop. Not when she heard Lucas shouting her name. Not when she heard the sickening sound of flesh meeting steel. Not when the woods seemed to close in around her. She ran until the house was nothing but a memory. By the time she reached town, Evelyn collapsed on the steps of the sheriff's office. They found her hours later, shaking, blood staining her hands. She told them everything. By the time Sheriff Walker and his men arrived at the clearing, nothing remained but the scorched outline of a foundation, as if the earth itself had swallowed the house whole. The table where Evelyn had sat, the blood-stained floorboards, the eerie glow of candlelight, it had all vanished. No bodies. No signs of a struggle. Nothing but silence. Evelyn stood on the edge of the clearing, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, her body trembling. The air was thick with the acrid scent of old smoke. She could still hear the screams, the desperate cries of the woman who had saved her, the furious roars of Lucas and his family as they fought in the darkness. But there was no proof. No evidence that the Holloways had ever been there at all. Sheriff Walker sighed, running a hand over his weathered face. He had lived in Willow Creek all his life, and though he had never spoken of it, he had always known something dark lurked in those woods. People had gone missing for decades. But now, standing here with nothing to show for it, he felt the weight of what Evelyn was saying. "They'll come back," she whispered. Walker looked at her. "Not if I can help it." But Evelyn knew better. The Holloways weren't gone. They were just waiting. They never slept. 1 year later, Evelyn never left Willow Creek. She should have. She should have packed a bag, boarded a bus, and disappeared into the world like she had always planned. But something anchored her here, an invisible thread wrapped tight around her ribs, pulling her back whenever she thought about leaving. The town had changed. People walked faster, glanced over their shoulders more often. Parents warned their children about the woods, about strangers, about the things that lurked in the dark. But life went on. The disappearances stopped. For a while. Evelyn tried to move on, tried to forget the way Lucas's hands had felt wrapped around her wrist, the sickly sweet taste of the Holloway's feast, the sound of that basement door creaking open. But at night, when the wind howled through the trees, she could hear it. The whisper of her name. The crack of twigs just beyond her window. The sensation of being watched. She told herself it was paranoia. Trauma. That the Holloways were gone. Then, one evening, she saw him. It was late past midnight when she stepped onto her porch, wrapped in her coat, a steaming mug in her hands. The autumn wind bit at her skin, sending leaves skittering across the empty road. And there, at the edge of the trees, he stood. Lucas. The same piercing blue eyes. The same sharp, unreadable smile. His clothes were pristine, as if he had never spent a single night in the dirt. His hair was neatly combed, his posture relaxed, casual. As if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't tried to feed her to his family. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers tightened around the mug. She should have screamed. Should have run inside and called the sheriff. But all she could do was stare. Lucas tilted his head slightly, watching her. Then, without a word, he took a slow step forward. Evelyn stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You're dead," she choked out. Lucas grinned. "You should know better than that, Eve." His voice. Smooth, sweet, inviting just as it had been that night. A shadow moved behind him. Then another. Shapes emerged from the trees, tall and silent. Eleanor. Samuel. Mary. All of them. Evelyn's stomach twisted into knots. They looked different. Their skin too pale, their eyes too dark. Their movements too fluid, too unnatural. "We missed you," Lucas murmured, stepping closer. Evelyn finally found her voice. "Stay back." Lucas only smiled. "We weren't finished with you." She turned and bolted inside, slamming the door shut. Her hands fumbled with the lock, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She grabbed her phone. Dialed the sheriff. No signal. The house fell silent. No footsteps. No voices. Had they gone? Evelyn's pulse thundered in her ears. Slowly, cautiously, she peered through the window. The road was empty. The trees stood still. They were gone. She let out a shaky breath, pressing a hand to her chest. Maybe she was losing her mind. Maybe they had never been there at all. Then, from somewhere inside the house, a floorboard creaked. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. A voice whispered from the darkness, soft and teasing. "You didn't really think you could run from family, did you?" The lights flickered, and the Holloways stepped out of the shadows. Evelyn ran. Her feet barely touched the floor as she sprinted down the hall, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The Holloways moved in the darkness, their footsteps eerily silent, their whispers slithering through the house. "You belong with us, Eve," Lucas's voice cooed from the shadows. "You always have." She stumbled into the kitchen, yanking open a drawer. Her fingers closed around the cold handle of a knife. Footsteps stopped behind her. Slowly, she turned. Lucas stood in the doorway, his head tilted, a sick amusement dancing in his eyes. Behind him, Mary grinned, her teeth too sharp, her fingers twitching. Eleanor and Samuel loomed in the dim light, their faces hollow, their eyes black as the abyss. "You shouldn't have left," Eleanor sighed, shaking her head. "Family stays together." Evelyn gripped the knife tighter. "You're not my family." Lucas took a slow step forward. "Oh, but you are, Eve." Something twisted in her stomach. A sick, cold realization. That's why they let her go. That's why they came back for her. The way Lucas had looked at her. The way Eleanor had smiled at her. The way the food had tasted rich, metallic, strangely familiar. Her pulse pounded in her skull. She wasn't meant to be their meal. She was meant to take her place at the table. The knife trembled in her grip. "I'll die before I become one of you." Lucas smirked. "Who said you had a choice?" The lights flickered. The house groaned. And the darkness swallowed her whole. The next morning, the house stood silent. The door hung open, swaying gently in the breeze. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of something long rotted. Plates sat on the table, untouched. The fireplace crackled weakly, casting shadows against the walls. Evelyn was gone. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No body. Just a whisper of laughter in the wind. And on the table, set beside an empty chair, a single plate. Waiting. For the next meal. For the next family member to come home. Because the Holloways never slept. And they were never, ever alone.